While we're all watching the obvious conflicts around the world, there's another war being fought. It's a silent one, a battle for total global domination. And it's not being fought with tanks or jets, but inside every single piece of technology we use. It's the global war for the microchip, and we're about to break down exactly who holds all the cards. Yep, they call it the chip war. It's this incredibly high-stakes competition really between the US and China. And you have to understand, the nation that controls the supply of these tiny electronic brains, well, they're going to control the 21st century. So the big question is, who's actually set up to win this thing? All right, so here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the new global battlefield. Then we'll get into the difference between chip designers and manufacturers. We'll look at Taiwan's silicon shield, super important. Then, how America controls the supply chain, how you can actually invest, and finally, what the future of this war looks like. Okay, so first things first, why are we even calling this a battlefield? Well, think about it. Centuries ago, power came from spices. Then it came from oil. Today, it all comes from silicon. I mean, just look around. The phone in your hand, the car you drive, the most advanced fighter jets, the entire AI revolution that is completely changing our world. Every single bit of it is powered by these tiny semiconductors. So whoever leads in chips, they lead the world. It is, without a doubt, the most critical resource of our time. So who actually leads this all-important market? Well, that's where it gets kind of complicated. Because making a chip isn't just one job. There are two totally different kinds of companies involved. You've got the designers, and then you've got the manufacturers. On one side, you have the architects, the chip designers, and here the USA is the undisputed king. We're talking giants like NVIDIA, who design something like 80 to 90% of all advanced AI chips. They make the brilliant blueprints, but, and this is the kicker, they don't physically build them. That power belongs to the manufacturers, the builders. And in that world, one Taiwanese company, TSMC, is king. Just let that sink in for a second. The US designs the brains, but another country has to actually perform the incredibly complex surgery to build them. And it turns out, one single company has become the world's only brain surgeon. And bam, here's where it all snaps into focus. When it comes to the world's most advanced chips, Taiwan's TSMC makes a mind-boggling 92% of them. The other 8%, that's Samsung and South Korea. And that's it. For the really cutting-edge stuff that's powering our future, there's literally no third option. The implications of this are just massive. I mean, if TSMC were to just shut down tomorrow, forget about it. The trillion-dollar valuations of companies like NVIDIA, gone. The entire AI revolution would just grind to a halt. Supply chains for basically every electronic device would be thrown into chaos. It's not an exaggeration to say this one company is an essential pillar holding up the entire global economy. Now, all this power, this huge dependency on one company, it gives TSMC this really unique geopolitical role. It basically acts as a silicon shield for the entire nation of Taiwan. And this is the wild part. TSMC is both Taiwan's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. See, China sees Taiwan as a breakaway province and would love to get control of its chip-making power. The US, on the other hand, absolutely cannot afford to lose access to TSMC. So this creates this incredibly fragile balance. China wants it, and because of that, the US is forced to protect it. It turns this one company into a global flashpoint. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if TSMC is so powerful, why can't it just call the shots? Well, the answer is no. And that's because the US has brilliantly and very strategically set up the entire global supply chain to make sure no single country can hold all the cards. Making just one of these advanced chips is like this incredible global puzzle, and it's all under US influence. Okay, so step one, the design, the blueprint, comes from the USA. Step two, the ridiculously complex machine you need to print that design onto silicon, it comes from one company in the Netherlands called ASML. Step three, critical parts for that machine, like special lasers and lenses, come from the USA and Germany. And only then, at step four, can TSMC in Taiwan actually make the chip. You take away any single piece of that puzzle, and the whole thing just falls apart. And this is the heart of America's whole strategy. By controlling all these different pieces, the US has created this powerful chokehold. It's banned top designers like NVIDIA from selling to China, it's forbidden TSMC from making advanced chips for Chinese companies, and it's pressured the Netherlands to stop ASML from shipping its best machines to China. They've essentially locked China out of the entire cutting-edge club. So this global conflict is creating massive risks, but also huge opportunities. And understanding the key players isn't just about geopolitics. It's about seeing where the money is flowing. So, where do you fit into all this? How can an investor from anywhere in the world get a seat at this high-stakes table? Well, the great news is, it's actually gotten way, way easier than you might think. Buying a single share of a company like NVIDIA can be really expensive, right? But now a lot of platforms offer what's called fractional investing. All it means is you can buy a tiny piece of a share for just a few dollars. It lets you get a stake in these huge companies without needing a ton of cash upfront. And the process itself? It's usually pretty straightforward for international investors. You find a platform that gives you access to US markets, you do a standard identity check, they call it KYC, you fund the account from your local bank, and then boom, you're ready to buy those fractions of shares in these global tech giants. So if you're thinking about which companies to look at, you can basically break them down into 3 buckets. First, you've got the designers, like NVIDIA and AMD. Then you have the essential manufacturer, which is TSMC. And finally, you have the big AI users who need these chips to build their models, like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. Each one plays a totally different role. And look, for a lot of people outside the US, this is a huge deal. Investing in this ecosystem lets you diversify away from your local market. It gives you exposure not just to these global tech companies, but also to big currencies like the US dollar. Okay, now let's get back to the war itself. All right, so let's get to the big question, the one everyone's asking. What happens next? The US might control the present, but you better believe China is playing the long game. See, China, having been locked out of this whole system, is basically saying, fine, we'll build our own. They are pouring unbelievable amounts of money into it. Right now, their best company, SMIC, can make 7-nanometer chips. Now, all that number means is how small the parts on the chip are. The smaller the number, the more powerful the chip. And 7-nanometer is really good, but it's still years behind the 3-nanometer chips TSMC is making. China's endgame? Total self-sufficiency, maybe by 2035 or 2040. So what's the countermove? Well, the US has been pushing TSMC to build factories on American soil, partly as insurance. There's a new one being built in Arizona right now, but Taiwan is walking a tightrope here. If it moves all its best tech to the US, it loses its strategic shield. So what's it doing? It's building factories for slightly older chips overseas while keeping the absolute best, most cutting-edge stuff safe at home. And that's where we are today. It leaves us with this massive open question. The US has masterfully controlled the global supply chain of today, building this incredible ecosystem that relies on its leadership. But China is working day and night to build its own, completely separate ecosystem from the ground up. The race for the technology of tomorrow is far, far from over.